So our next guest is Colin Palmer. And Colin Palmer has been the director and chair of the Powell River Regional Board for the last 9 years. And this definitely deserves a round of applause because Powell River was the first GE-free crop zone in Canada. So well done for that. He's the owner-operator, or was, of a commercial printing business, the chair of the local Community Futures Board for 4 years in the mid-90s, a member of the Provincial Environmental Appeal Board for 4 years in the 80s, and actually served as mayor of Powell River for 2 terms in the mid-80s. And he is one of the founding members of the Powell River Anti-Pollution Association. And I expect we could just lump genetically modified seeds in there with that category entitled pollution. So Colin, come on up.
Good evening, everyone. I think I have a task here tonight. My task is to ask you to do things. Percy is going to tell you a lot about what's been happening with genetically engineered crops. Josh and Tom are going to give you other information. My job is to say, well, look, you came here to listen, but when you've listened, you've got to do something. You can't just go home and, forget about it. About 5 years ago, Percy came to Powell River. He had a big supper with about, 300 or 400 people in the community, and I was invited along. And I wasn't quite sure why I was there, but anyway, after about an hour of listening to Percy, I was just absolutely dumbstruck as to what was happening in his life at that time and some of the things that he was going through with the other farmers. And I asked him a few minutes ago to tell you about the corporate police force that runs around the farms in Saskatchewan. He didn't mention it this afternoon, and that always struck me as being something absolutely incredible in this whole saga. So what I want you to do is, first of all, talk to local politicians. You have here something called the Capital Regional District, and there are city people who sit on it as directors, and there are people in electoral areas around Victoria who sit on the Capital Regional District. There are 29 regional districts in this province. And I want you to either phone them. Sometimes it's best to sit down with them. They don't always have offices. Take them out for coffee. Get to them, bring them to a little meeting in your home or something like that. And just ask them what they know about this whole issue. And they need to be aware of the fact that as an elected official, like myself, we are responsible for our constituents' safety, your economic well-being, and also your health. And with this GE-free crop zone situation, they need to know that you need their help. And they actually vote. These people actually put their hands up and things happen. And they need to be persuaded that they need to vote for a GE-free crop zone in the Capital Regional District. And you need Percy's information, you need Tom and Josh's information just to get the full background. If they balk at the word zone, because they might do, because they're politicians, they might think that the zoning means they have to have a regulation and an inspector running around. Remind them it could be a GE-free crop region, it could be a GE-free crop area. They don't have to use the word zone, but they have to be sure that it's GE-free. On our letterhead for our regional board now, we have it right under the title, genetically free engineered crop zone area, and we sort of make sure that when everybody reads our correspondence, they know that we have this policy. we have a policy for herbicides and pesticides. And although we don't have full authority over these things, at least when people want to spray herbicides, pesticides, if they want to grow GE-free crops, then the local government representing the constituents is going to get pretty miserable with them. And I'm finding with corporations and individuals now that that's a pretty good thing for government to do. I'm at the moment getting miserable with private managed forest land companies. We have island timberlands in our area, and I'm rattling their chains on a regular basis, and they don't like it. I rattle the chains of independent power producers when they don't do what my local government wants. And I seem to be spending a lot of time with corporations rather than with other governments nowadays. And it's a disturbing trend. And so you have to get to your politician, your local one, find out who it is to start with. Some of you might be a little bit embarrassed to know that you don't know who votes on your behalf in your local government, but if you can find out, meet them and tell them about this and ask them to put a motion at a committee meeting or at a board meeting and just make sure this thing happens. I don't want you to threaten them, but there is an election in November. You might just gently remind them that that's why they're there, because they won't be doing this anymore if they don't get support. So you might want to take advantage of the time. I also want you to realize that in this issue, there's not much point in chasing after the provincial MLAs. They don't have the jurisdiction over this. It's the federal government that have the jurisdiction. So you need to be looking for your Member of Parliament. And it doesn't matter whether they're Conservatives, Liberals, NDP, Green, Rhinoceros, whatever party they are, you have to find these people because it's at the federal level that the issue has developed. And the federal government at some point gave patent rights to these big companies to patent these genetically engineered plants. And that's what triggered the whole thing off. And Percy's going to tell you about the police force attached to that as well. So the members of Parliament are the ones who need to know. And you need to remind them that although Health Canada gives approval to these companies to act the way they do in this country, it doesn't alter the fact that the research which is being done is not being done by Health Canada, it's being done by the corporations themselves. So the chickens are asking the fox, is everything okay in the chicken coop? And the fox is saying, oh sure, yeah, we don't worry at all, everything's fine. So you have to get to those federal members of Parliament and say, look, you have to get back to your party, you have to get back into the House of Commons, and you have to start bringing up these issues and stop persuading the bureaucrats that they are running the country. You have to get into the bureaucrats' offices. You have to go and find the deputy ministers. And one thing you might want to ask is, why are federal scientists in Health Canada being fired if they don't like some of the reports that these big companies are producing and giving to the government for approval? A number have been fired, and it's happening in Europe as well. One in Britain is a fellow of the Royal Society. He's been fired because he was objecting to what these companies were producing, and the government said, well, you're not supposed to argue, so goodbye. These are the kinds of things that are going on in our society, and it's very wrong. So you need to tell the MP you do not feel safe, because the research is not pure research. It's been done by vested interests with a vested interest in profit, and it's not in your interests. You need to say to the federal MP, why aren't you allowing labeling on products that tell me that this product is GE free and this product is not? Why aren't you doing that? You're my federal member of Parliament. What's the problem? Go and find the people and make it happen. And the other group you need to talk to are the farmers. And that's where it's very difficult, because there are farmers and there are agri-farmers. There are people who have a different idea to deal with the land, and Percy can give you some good ideas about that. And you have to talk to the farmers and ask them, okay, why did you sign a contract to plant this particular type of crop in your land, when in actual fact that crop can contaminate another farmer's property and probably put that farmer out of business, especially if they are an organic farmer? Why don't you ask the farmers, well, are you sure this is safe? And they'll usually say, well, the guy who sold it to me said it was fine. They've got permits, it's all approved. Yeah, but approved by who? Well, approved by Health Canada. Yes, but where did Health Canada get the information? And again, you now can tell them that they got the information from the guy who the salesman works for. So it's a matter of pointing these things out. And eventually, it all boils down to the fact, are these products eventually going to affect us? We just don't know. And that's the problem. The research has not been done, especially in this country and in some parts of Europe. So if you want any more motivation, I always remind people, and this is what affected the people in Powell River as well. If you take the main crops that are produced in the world now, wheat, rice, etc., you can probably only come up with about 12 or 13 crops that have ever been developed for food production. That's about all you can count. There's just that few of them. And then think of all the animals that have been domesticated. There's only about 14 of them on the whole planet that have ever been domesticated. Now, if you can genetically engineer all those crops, and if you can start genetically engineering those animals, you will rule the world. And that's what these companies are up to. They tried it 40 years ago with pesticides and herbicides. That got shot down quite a lot by people like you. Now, those same companies are engineering crops. And they're trying to do the same thing with animals, things like salmon. People are trying to figure out how to do it with tomatoes. I mean, it's just going on and on and on. So it's very disturbing. So when you sit down and you say, well, this is not going to affect me, I want to remind you that right now, cattle are being fed with genetically engineered corn in the Courtenay area, and those cattle produce milk. And that milk is being drunk by people up and down this island. So in Powell River, our farmers became very worried about this, and they didn't want their organic crops contaminated, and they said to me, look, you've got to help us. And my board said, yeah, this is pretty important. And so we passed a resolution, and it says now to anybody like Monsanto, Cargill, or anybody else, including the farmers, including the MPs, and anyone who wants to know, that we have drawn a line in the sand, and we don't like anybody coming into our area just doing their own corporate thing. And I just encourage you to be active and try it and see if you can make it work with the Capital Regional District. Thank you.